How are you? How have you been? I know I already asked that, but for the
Well,
people.
for the record, I'm doing okay. I usually think I say, "I'm doing great," and then I kind of
Mhm.
shake off, but I mean, I'm doing okay.
So tell me about yourself. Your name, age, pronouns, where you're from, based, what you do, whatever you
Okay.
want.
I'm Catie Poneck. I'm trying to go by Kitty, but no one calls me that, so it's fine. Um, but I'm 21. I'm a Scorpio. I
Nice.
use she, her pronouns. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, which is the best city in Texas. And I'm currently also based in San Antonio, Texas, because Corona decided to shut down the world, as
Mhm.
much of us, many of us have experienced. But I'm also part time based in Austin. So during the week
Mhm.
I'm in Austin, and during the weekend I'm in San Antonio. Oh, and what I do, I'm an artist. I'm supposed to be a painter, but I don't know if I'm still a painter anymore. This year has
Mhm.
changed things for me. But
Mhm.
I'm an artist, a writer, a creator, a plant mom,
Nice.
a
Mhm.
cat mom. Um, Yeah, and I'm also currently a assistant committee clerk at the Texas House of Representatives.
Woo.
I love saying that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a flex. It's a
It's a
big
fl- it.
flex. So I guess how did you get into art generally?
I think it's hard. I don't have the story where it's like I suddenly discovered art, or even I've always been an
Mhm.
artist. I think I've always been an artist in the sense that like I always like to draw, but
Mhm.
I've never been the artist that people are where they're like fill tons of notebooks and they're always sketching, and it's all
Mm.
and for me like art was always, it was never a priority, and so it was always kind of
Mhm.
like not an escape, but like the most art I probably ever did before I actually said, oh, I want to go to art school, which was like junior year of
Mhm.
high school, was drawing on my notebook during like class, like
Mhm.
doodles.
Mhm.
And so I never,
Yeah.
but I tell this story. I'll tell you the story. So I went to
Mhm.
Montessori school when I was little.
Me too.
I think we talked about this before. It's crazy. I
Yeah.
think it made us artists. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But my school was, for a lot of reasons, not good. But I remember when I was younger, it was very, very good for me.
Mhm.
And we would go to the library every single Wednesday. So every Wednesday we'd walk. I did a whole writing piece on this so I could go into like eloquence.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you'd walk down this like old staircase where you could see all these cool fossils. Like not that they were
Mhm.
like
Oh, cool.
established or anything. It was just like
Mhm.
we'd walk down a hill. And Texas
Mhm.
used to be underwater. So like
Mm.
with Florida as well, like it just parts of us used to be
Yeah.
underwater. So there's tons of
Mhm.
fossils everywhere. So we'd walk down that,
Mm.
cross this busy street to this little tiny public library, and I
Mhm.
used to check out tons of books. And I remember the first time I ever saw like a how to draw book, and it was
Mm.
like manga, and I got
Yes, yes.
so into it. And I remember like
Mhm.
I was like, I didn't do any math, I didn't do any of my schoolwork. I was just in the classroom, like
Mhm.
copying, drawing, and I feel like that's what got me into art. Those like
Yeah, yeah.
weathered library copies of manga illustration books that I was
Mhm.
like, yes, this will teach me everything I need to know. And
Yeah.
the rest is history. So,
Mhm. That's so
but
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, for me it was like I'd yeah, always been into art too, but I think in like 8th grade I got really into like Mark Crilly on YouTube,
Oh,
who's this guy
really?
that like yeah, he like drew like manga sort of thing. He always had like like tutorials on how to draw faces and like landscapes and perspective and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So that yeah, that was my
That
thing.
stuff is so important. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
us as like art students don't actually use that
Mhm.
information anymore. But like when you're
Yeah.
young and you're like, I don't
Mhm.
know how to do this, and like I
Mhm.
don't know what your art program at school was, but mine didn't really have anything. Like
Yeah.
it was very
I'm like
independent study.
yeah. I don't remember like my middle school was Montessori, but I don't remember taking an art class at all.
Yeah.
Or maybe my memory's just bad, but
Well, Montessori is also weird because they're like it's only like one class, and so if your teacher's
yeah,
not
yeah.
super artistic, you're not going to do art. But it was also like I had this such a negative connotation with art. I ramble, so you
Mm.
tell me when
Oh,
to
yeah,
stop
no, that's
talking.
good. That's good.
But it was always like something I wasn't supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be doing something else, and instead I was
Mhm.
doing art. Like I was
Ah,
supposed to be doing my times tables, and instead I was doing art. And it's like okay,
right.
so it became a thing for me personally with
Mm.
my teacher that
Mhm.
she'd say you can't draw until you do this. And so,
Mhm.
and then it continued to high school where it's like you're drawing in class, you're not paying attention. And for somebody who has
Mm.
ADD, that was really big for me. I was like, no, I have
Mhm.
to draw or else I'm not going to
Yeah.
pay attention at all.
For me, it's like I always did art growing up, so I was surprised that other people were surprised that I said that I was going to art school. It's like,
Really?
didn't you yeah, it's like, was
Didn't
this
you
not
know?
expected? Yeah, didn't you know? Even though like film is a bit like different, but did you take like art classes in high school?
Yeah, so we had like one art teacher, and I
Hmm.
took again, like I was always an artist, but it's like, what's your hobby? Oh, artist. It's
Hmm.
not like, what do
Right.
you love to do? And
Yeah.
I was a dancer too. I love animals and all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So I was kind of like an overall creative person, as I still am. And then, as I think all artists are, I don't think anyone can say
Hmm.
like they're one thing. But
Hmm.
yeah, I took like high school art classes, but they were just, and I loved them because I felt like I enjoyed the classes and it was not like
Hmm.
stressful like the rest. 'Cause I went to a very, very intense high school, like super, super.
Hmm.
You have to like take an exam to get into the high school. So it's like
Oh wow.
very, very competitive, very
Hmm.
science focused. I mean, I had like there's a
Mm.
girl in my grade who like cured gastric cancer, and she's now
What?
like, yeah, and she met Joe Biden, she met Obama, she went to like the, I know, insane. And
Wow.
another classmate of mine was like, who doesn't go there anymore, who didn't go there anymore,
Mhm.
but he left like junior year. He was like,
Mhm.
he like golfed with Tiger Woods. Like it was very, very
Right.
like like accelerated. So people
Mhm.
who were there were like had to be the best at what they did. But
Mhm.
art was never really like encouraged. I mean, it was part of the program, but I really
Mhm.
found my art junior year because
Mhm.
the summer before senior year, I went to RISD for the
Mm.
pre-college program, and that
Oh, nice.
was like,
Mhm.
oh my god, I did not know
Yeah.
you could do this. I did not know
Mhm.
studio classes existed. I mean, I was
Right.
like, this is real. And then that was when I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm applying to art school. I did not know art
Mhm.
school existed. It wasn't even
Yeah.
an option for me.
Mhm.
Um, and thank God my parents so supportive.
Mhm.
Um, and they have the ability to support me too. And so they were like, you got to do what you got to do. And so I applied to 5 liberal arts and 5 art schools, and
Mhm.
to majority of them. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to art school. And I was the only one in my grade, probably the only one for the past 20 years at my school.
Wow.
So it was not super, super encouraged,
Mhm.
but I was like president of our literary magazine in high school, and that was
Mm.
so much fun because I was able to like produce
Mhm.
like literary magazines with art and stuff,
Mhm.
and it was cool because I was like, oh my god, you guys are all so artistic. Like, why haven't you been making things? And they're like,
Yeah.
no, I'm gonna be a doctor. And I'm like, you can be both. And
Right.
we put on like these open mic nights, and it was
Mm.
so fun. I mean, it
Mhm.
was like it was lovely because we're all doing like cool performances, and then the whole school is there to support it. And it was
Right.
just like a wonderful experience where I saw that wow, art exists in everybody.
Mhm.
It's just a different. And I so many people were like, no, I'm not good. I'm not going to do it. And I was like,
Mhm.
it's just like
It's
it
sad.
hurts to
Mhm.
hear that. Yeah, and so in the future, I definitely want to continue that. I want to be like, listen,
Mhm.
everybody, like, was at a young age, we're just told like,
Like, no.
nope,
Yeah.
that's not you. That's not
Mhm.
you. You're not artsy, and so you can't do
Mhm.
art. And art is so vast. It's like it could be anything.
Mhm.
We had some guy come play like the kazoo, and I was like,
Whoa. That's
that's
so
art.
cool. Yeah. Like Seth Rogen makes pottery, so really anyone can do anything. How did you pick like being a painting major? Um,
Mhm.
and I guess the first 2 years that we were at Pratt, like how did that sort of, I don't know if you just want to talk about those 2 years. Mhm.
Well, I went into Pratt applying to schools undecided,
Mhm.
and my favorite thing that I did in high school was I would do wood prints, like wood carving prints. So I
Mm.
thought, okay, I'll go in. I studied. I was like a painting major at RISD, and I loved
Mhm.
it. But I realized how lonely it was. Like
Mm.
as a painter, you're by yourself for a long time in the studio. It's not a collaborative process in a lot of
Mhm.
sense. It's a lot of by yourself, headphones in, working.
Mhm.
And now I love that. But then I was like, this is kind of sad. I kind of like the collaborative aspect of things. So I went
Mhm.
into school thinking I was undecided. Then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna be a
Mm.
printmaker. So when I was like visiting schools, I was like, this I need to make sure these places have good print programs. And then I
Right.
got to Pratt,
Mhm.
and we take foundation year,
Yeah.
and I loved foundation year. I don't know how you felt about it, but I was like,
Mhm.
this is amazing. It was, like, intense, and we had Jane, and Jane was
Yeah,
super
yeah.
intense, but, like, I learned so much from her, and she and I are actually,
Mhm.
like, good friends. Like, we email back and forth, like, every
Oh,
week.
really? I
Yeah,
love
like,
that.
she comments on all my Instagram posts, she
Oh
DMs, she's
my
like, "Love
god.
it." I know. I'm
I
like,
love that.
"Really?" I know, and she was so intimidating, and I'm like,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
likes me." And that's
Mhm.
never happened before. Teachers don't never like me, so Anyway, I loved all the classes I took, but the art history
Mhm.
class I took, I was like, this is it. This is what I
Yes,
want to
yes.
be. And I
Mhm.
love art history. But I think there was still that part of me that came from a very academic background that was like,
Mhm.
I can't be an artist. I have to be a academic who likes art. So
Right.
what is that?
Mhm.
That's art history. And I loved
Mhm.
art history, but then the first week of sophomore year,
Mhm.
I was in my classes and I was like, I hate this. I hate this so
Mm.
much because I was mostly in art history classes and I didn't like any of my teachers and I didn't like my
Mhm.
like the peers. I was like, I don't really feel like this group is me.
Mhm.
Um, and the one studio class I had was a painting studio, but it was for all non-majors. And I was like,
Oh.
it didn't feel as what I needed. And I was like, okay,
Right,
this is
yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm not being challenged at all.
Challenged, right. Mhm.
Yeah, and so then I changed majors second week sophomore year, and I was like, I'll do
Mhm.
painting major.
Mhm.
And I'm very happy I did that, but even now, I'm like,
Mhm.
illustration?
Yeah.
Like, hmm? And but then it's kind of those things where I think painting is so open-ended that
Right.
I can do a lot of different things with it and still be like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, I studied painting, but I don't know if I'll be a painter. I don't know
Right.
if I'll
Mhm.
be and especially with Corona. I mean, I'll get into that
Mhm.
later. I'm sure you're gonna ask about that. But
Mhm.
I got super into digital art, so that's a whole thing. But anyway,
Ooh.
I sophomore year, freshman year, I would say freshman year was better than sophomore year for me personally.
Mhm.
I think freshman year was really intensive. It was a lot of like intense, long hours, but I felt like I learned a lot. Whereas I
Mhm.
think the one downside of Pratt is I think it's a little bit like you get out of it what you put into it. Where I'm
Mhm.
sure we both have peers who are like, I didn't do the assignment. And the teacher's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
Mhm.
cool. And it's
Mhm.
like, there's no like
Yeah.
I need a hard ass teacher. Like I need
Mhm.
Jane, and she's
Mhm.
like, listen, I'm gonna teach you
Yeah.
things, and it's
Mhm.
fantastic. I mean, she's such a great teacher.
Yeah.
Um, but that's why. But I of course I'm like, do I belong at Pratt? Is Pratt the right
Mhm.
place to be? And everyone
Mhm.
feels that way. Like everyone is second guessing themselves all the time. It's
Yeah.
part of college.
Mhm.
But I had to remind myself that I chose Pratt because I could do all the things I wanted to do. Like if I went to RISD,
Right.
I couldn't double minor. I
Mhm.
couldn't write and paint. But at Pratt,
Mhm.
I'm a double minor in art history and creative writing, and I'm a
Ooh.
painter. And so I took a printmaking class. I mean, I could do
Mhm.
all these things.
Right. Mhm.
And yes, maybe the painting program isn't as intensive as like I would want it to be. I'm
Mhm.
not being late, but like I'm able to do a lot of stuff. So
Right.
that's where I am right now.
I guess if you wanna talk about the art scene in Texas and then in New York, or sort of like how you like, what it was like being in New York and how that influenced, like, your work? Mhm.
Well, I would say that art scene in Texas, I wouldn't want to say it's non-existent because it does exist, but I don't want anyone who sees this to be like, but I would say I capital H hate the San Antonio art scene. And I think as someone who comes from probably like a town that's not like, yes, we have art, but
Mhm.
it's like it's I hate the word artsy.
Mm, mhm.
And I don't want to get angry, but I'm already getting angry thinking about it. But the San Antonio art scene is like they think they're the coolest fucking people ever. And like everyone makes the same shitty art. And it
Mhm.
bothers me so much because it's like I've never been accepted into the community. I've never been
Mm,
like I'll take classes at the community center at
mhm.
South School of Art, which is like the only art school like in the South where we are as South as we are. I don't know. But it's
Mhm.
like never accepted, never encouraged.
Mm,
Um, I would say for young kids, it's fantastic. I took tons of art classes when I was little,
mhm.
loved them. They were great. Moving to New York, I mean, how can you not?
Yeah.
I think it starts with the museums, and it
Mhm,
starts with
mhm.
just the fact that like they're at your access, like they're at your
Yeah.
fingertips. And I
Mhm.
think our school did a good job of incorporating them, like assigning us, like especially foundation year, go to the Met and
Yeah.
do this, go to
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
and then I think it depends on your friend group. But
Mhm.
my friend Jake is like super into contemporary art and super into like he's just up to date on stuff. And I remember
Mhm.
the night before my 18th no, my 19th birthday, my first birthday away from home, we
Mhm.
went to the Whitney for like a late night exhibition of the Warhol stuff. And it was just,
Right.
I mean, that kind of experience is so life changing because it really
Mhm.
just it opens up your world. And it's hard to be like, New York changed me as an artist. Like, duh. It's gonna. It's a huge
Yeah.
city, has these long history and all this information, all that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
just to be a part of a community that is with like-minded individuals where we're all wanting to do something with ourselves,
Yeah.
and we all
Hmm.
we feel creative and accelerated that way. I remember like my sophomore year, we had a seminar class or seminar.
Hmm.
Teacher was kind of whack, but they would bring in all these contemporary artists that they knew. And
Oh,
it was
cool.
like incredible. I was like, I didn't know these people existed. I didn't know
Yeah.
contemporary art was a thing.
Hmm.
I just know Monet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like I didn't know who this person was. And then I've actually met a contemporary artist through them that I became an intern for, and
Mm.
I love her. I was in her gallery show, like, she did
Ooh.
performance art, and she poured rice
Hmm.
all over my body, and, like so, like, in that sense,
Hmm.
there's so many niches that you can find and
Yeah.
you can fall into, and gallery ho I just and it's kind of like
Hmm.
asking, like, "Okay, well, is it good being an artist in New York?" It's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
It's like
no
you're
better
living
place."
it's like you're living in a field trip is how I
Yes!
see it, like New York
Yes,
being.
exactly, exactly, and not to say that it's not serious, like, it's not like,
Mhm.
"Oh, you're having fun all the time," like, it's like, no, it's
Yeah.
so educating, like, it's like when you go to the Natural
Right.
History Museum or something like that for, like, a field trip, and you're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I didn't know this stuff. Oh, okay, cool. Wow, the world's so big.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another field trip group too, people like me," and then it's like, that's the
Yeah.
world. The world just becomes
Big, like
10
huge.
times bigger, huge,
Mhm.
especially for people, I think, like us coming from the South, um,
Yeah.
and coming from very unique states.
Yeah. Very specific states.
Very specific types of people from these
Mhm.
states.
When you were talking, it made me think of like thinking about colleges and stuff. I remember when I was in high school, I was looking at colleges for like writing programs because I wanted to be a writer. Um, and then that sort of like completely shifted, and I was like, okay, film, that's like sort of two
Yeah.
major cities. But for you, like in terms of writing, how did you get into that, and how has that sort of like been in your life with college and everything?
So, okay. So long story, my grandma was a
Mhm.
research librarian. This is gonna get deep. This is a very interesting story.
Mhm.
It's very intense, and I don't know
Mhm.
why, but my writing to me is very much like connected to this like ancestral history of mine. So,
Mhm.
so long time ago in the
Mhm.
40s, a girl was born. That woman grew up probably
Mhm.
with like depression, anxiety, all that kind of stuff. Things I
Mhm.
also deal with. But it was the 40s. She got pregnant.
Mhm.
She had a baby. She had to give that baby up for adoption. When that baby was 10, not they were separate, but the woman killed herself because she basically succumbed to her mental illness that she had never
Oh
able
wow.
to. So my mom,
Mhm.
that's my mom, not my mom. My mom was not the one who died. My mom was the 10-year
Right.
old who was
Mhm.
adopted by two very educated but toxic parents. So my
Mhm.
grandma was very um I mean she was abused. So she was like, I don't know, my grandpa was an asshole, and he
Mhm.
was very, very smart. He went to Cambridge, Oxford, all those kind of places, and he was a
Mhm.
psychiatrist. Um, very important. So my mom had a lot of people in her life. I mean, she met Kurt Vonnegut, like she knew
Oh
the
wow.
astronauts who went to the moon. Like they're like
Mhm.
crazy experiences, but not because they were like upper class. Like my
Mhm.
grandparents were like they barely got by, but they just were
Mhm.
they were very like smart people. So they knew a
Right.
lot of smart people. So my mom had that
Mhm.
kind of positive like interjection with people.
Mhm.
But my grandpa was abusive, and my mom
Mhm.
was abused, and my grandma didn't really do anything to protect her. And
Mhm.
so they got divorced, and then my grandma, a single mom in the 60s, who was a librarian, kind of had an awakening. And she started
Mhm.
doing yoga, and she became like a
Mhm.
feminist, and she started eating only like healthy grains and stuff. And so my mom, which was good for my grandma, my mom was very much just like left alone. And
Mhm.
my mom has since had a really hard time, and she also dealt with depression, and she became an alcoholic. And this is intense, I know, but I only found that out like last year because
Oh
I was
wow.
like,
Mhm.
hey, like I remember this weird memory of like something, and she was like, I need to tell you something. And so she's a recovering
Mm.
alcoholic, and I was just like,
Mhm.
it all
Well,
made
yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Mhm.
and I think a part of this trauma that she experienced, not only the inherited trauma of being adopted, and then also not knowing who her mom was, and then finding out later in life that her mom killed herself. And like
Right.
I think trauma is inherited. I think that like we physically
Mhm.
organically remember it. And so I
Mhm.
think she was having to deal with that kind of trauma, and she turned to writing. and she turned to
Mm.
read, and she was a vivacious reader. They had no TV. My mom read I mean, I asked, have you read this book? Yeah. She's read every book in the world. And she
Mhm.
became a writer.
Mhm.
And so to me, that was always part of my life. I was like, my mom's a writer, yeah, but she doesn't
Mhm.
actually write anymore because it was it's such a
Right. It's a,
emotional,
right. Mhm.
it's a cathartic experience for her.
Yeah.
And so I've never actually read any of her stuff. Like she's not
Mm.
wanted me to. And so it's this whole weird combination of things. Then I started writing. And
Mhm.
for me, it started off as a cathartic thing as well. But now my writing, I think, exists purely to
Mhm.
deal with this trauma that's been inherited from my mom, from my mom's mom, from my
Right.
mom's mom. My grandma was also adopted, so we have no idea. Like, there's
Mm.
this whole like conversation of
Yeah.
who do I belong to,
Mhm.
who will claim me, like this whole
Mhm.
thing. Um, and for some reason, it doesn't show itself in my visual art, but my writing is just all about
Mhm.
that. My mom is my muse, and so that's why I tell this whole story about her past.
Mhm.
Because I can't say I'm a writer and not talk
Right.
about that. Like I write
Mhm.
purely because I feel like I have to deal with this, like
Mhm. Like a
a
calling.
relationship.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm very like my mom's very healthy now, and like luckily my parents are super healthy parents, and I've been able to deal with it. But I was actually just
Mhm.
talking to her about it yesterday. Like
Mhm.
my mom, and my mom's mom all had probably the same mental illnesses, right?
Right.
My
Mhm.
mom's mom ended up succumbing to it. She died. She killed herself.
Mhm.
My mom turned to alcohol,
Mhm.
was able to overcome that, but that was a part of her.
Right.
Me, I am fine. I am
Mhm.
medicated. Yes, we're all medicated,
Yeah.
but like it just shows that it's like
Right. Like, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. I know there's a lot
Mhm.
of
Generational trauma. Yeah. It's, yeah.
yes, and
Mhm.
so many people can relate to that in so many senses, especially going way way back. But
Right.
um, I don't know anything about my family. I don't know anything about my ancestry. I know
Mhm.
me. I'm the daughter of my mom. My mom is the daughter of this woman, and then there's three of us. And the
Mhm.
three of us have not had easy lives. I've had a much
Mhm.
easier life than them too. But like, so it's kind of like people are like, yeah, my grandma came over on the boat, or yeah, my did it run. Oh yeah, like we're 16 generations deep in Kentucky. I'm like, I have no stories like that. The only
Right.
ancestry
Mhm.
stories I have are like these depressing, horrible tales. So I think my writing deals with that. So,
Mhm.
but then also it's the weird question of why did I not go to school for writing? I don't know.
Mhm.
That's a good. I
Yeah.
really
It can be some, because I feel like with art, it's, I found in high school, like it was really, really like hard to make art for classes, to like have
yeah
like a deadline and like that kind of thing. So I feel like for you, writing is probably more like personal.
yeah.
Um, which, yeah, you should send me your stuff. I would love to
Oh,
read
I would love
it.
to. I'd love to.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I have a website which is linked in my
Oh,
Instagram, and it has like
mhm,
a link to like my writing portfolio. But like I would love to send you
mhm.
just stuff normally. But
Yes, yes.
I love my writing. It's not that I read it. I'm
Mhm.
like, eh,
Okay.
okay. And then I also kind of like people who read my writing. Like my
Mhm,
it's kind of upsetting. But the lady I interned for, who's a visual artist, I gave her like a
mhm,
portfolio. Like, hey, this is what I do. Like, do you want me to work with you?
mhm.
Um, and like the first meeting, she was like, "Why are you a painter? You should be writing." And I was like, I was like,
Why not
okay,
both?
right up, true. But
Yeah.
it's that question of like, am I barking up the wrong tree? Do I actually have
Mhm,
like more talent in this aspect of creativity than I do here? But I think also I don't know. I don't
yeah.
it's just hard. It's
Mhm.
art is not easy. I'm
Yeah.
creative, but I'm not like, oh yes, it flows for me so naturally. Like
Mhm.
no, I have to work at it. And I
Yeah.
haven't, yeah. So I'm a writer. That's a big part of who I am. I would say, at least
Mhm.
half of me.
Do you wanna, I guess, talk about the past year with the pandemic and being home? And you said that you got into digital art, so
Yeah. The week of March 14th was the week I'll never forget. I remember just like my family was actually coming out to New York because we were going to go to Boston. My mom's from Boston,
Mhm,
and so we were going to go there for spring break. And the
mhm.
day they're flying in, that Wednesday, is when we all got the email
Oh, yeah. Oh, the
blasting
Wednesday. I was
the
like,
Wednesday.
"Whoa,
That
I just transported back into Willoughby."
right? And it's like it was already like it was already wintry, so the weather was like it
Yeah.
was already like sun setting at 4, and I was like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going home. Tell my parents, they're like, yay, we have you for 3 weeks. Oh my
Yeah.
god, great. Um,
Woo!
yeah,
Month-long
so
spring
like
break.
I know, and so like one of my roommates, I was with 4 people. One had already gone. off to her spring break
Mhm.
celebration. My friend Mavi, I don't know if you know who Mavi is, but
Yeah, I
Mavi,
don't know.
I don't know, she's fantastic. So she was supposed to be going to Cuba, part of that program,
Oh,
and it
uh-huh.
got canceled a few days before. And so that's when I was like, oh shit,
Mhm.
shit's about to hit the fan. But none
Yeah.
of us knew how much would hit the fan.
Mhm.
And so it was just the three of us left. And I remember being like, okay, guys, I'm gonna go. And I'm just shoving stuff into like the two suitcases I had,
Yeah.
being like, what do I need? Like what? And I remember them kind of like being like, haha, Katie. I was like, I'm gonna take these particular photos.
Yeah.
These are specific to me. And they're like, why those?
Mhm.
Why not all of it? Or like why take any of it?
Yeah.
And thank God I did, because there are certain things that I'm like, I'm glad I brought with me because my stuff is
Mhm.
still there. All my
Yeah,
stuff
me
is
too.
still
Me too.
yeah. And people are
Mhm.
like, what? Like
Yeah.
I'm like, no, everything is
Yeah.
still there.
I came
Um,
home in a little carry-on suitcase.
yeah. I mean, we had no knowing that this was
Yeah.
gonna happen. I mean, no
Mhm.
one did. But we were like, I think it hit college students especially hard because, especially I feel like sophomore year. I don't know how it was for you, but I was
Yeah.
like,
I
I
know,
was
I was, like,
I
living.
was I was like, "I finally know who I am." I was making
Mhm.
I
I'm
was
an adult.
experimenting. Yes, I was living
Mhm.
by myself. I was like,
I have
I'm
a kitchen.
yes, I'm
Mhm.
doing all this art. I know
Mhm.
who I am. I'm
Yeah.
exploring myself. And then it was like, "You're going back home to your childhood bedroom, and you're
Yep.
not gonna go
Yep.
back."
Where I still am.
And I think we talked about this. I came home and I think at first everyone was just kind of in denial, and I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, yeah.
And then it became clear to me, like, July, that I was like, "I'm not going back to school," because
Mhm, mhm.
spring semester was pretty rough doing it at home.
Yeah.
I had a literal class where the teacher just drew on a board, like, "This is how you would cut wood, and this is the machine will look like this." And I'm like, "That's not education." This poor
Oh my
guy,
god. Yeah.
poor teachers. I mean, I do not blame the teachers at all. I feel
Mhm.
horrible because they had an
Yeah,
impossible task,
like
especially with
mhm.
art. Like, it's
Yeah. Especially, like,
impossible.
studio classes, like, thankfully, with the
Yeah.
film, like, we have our or most of us have our computers, but I have, like, an iMac and then, like, a MacBook, but my iMac was in my dorm. I didn't get it back until, like, August. So, like, being, like, without that and having to, like, edit, like, projects for my classes, like, with deadlines on this,
Oh my
like, thing that's, like, humming and, like, blowing air.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like made one iMovie and it was like, like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah. But
Oh
with,
my
like,
goodness.
studio classes where you have, like, materials
I
online.
mean, my family tried to make me a little studio in our back house. It did not work. I mean, I
Oh,
was able to
aw.
sit for like a week or like the
Mhm.
end of the semester, but I have not been back there since. I would like pass out because of the fume. Like there was no
Yeah.
ventilation. And so that
And
actually,
it's
so
hot.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's freaking summer in Texas. And so it was hard.
Mhm.
And I kind of I haven't touched oil paint in about a year, which is very strange for
Wow.
me because I
Mhm.
started painting in oil. And I never liked acrylic except for
Mhm.
LCD. They were like
Mhm.
like a bunch, and so I was like, okay, acrylic's cool. So now,
Mhm.
so for my spring semester, end of my classes, I did all my paintings in acrylic, and so it completely changed the way you make art. Like, acrylic is
Right.
so different than oil; it
Mhm.
just completely changes things. I mean, your ability to mix, to control how things dry. I mean, it was like
Mhm.
I suddenly became so two-dimensional in my art. And then
Mm.
when semester was over, I don't think I haven't picked up a paintbrush in a long time. Like,
Mhm.
no, I made a painting recently, but it was like the only painting I've made in I mean the entire time of COVID. Like it was rough.
Right.
And because I've had to change locations, not just be like at home in Texas, not be in New York, but like
Mhm. Not like you don't have your things.
I remember teachers would always say, like, guys, you're in these huge studios, like, make big paintings, like, take
Mm.
advantage. And I've always been a person that worked big, so it wasn't an issue for
Mhm.
me. But like now I'm like, they're right. I don't have the space to make what I want to
Yeah.
make. I don't have the
Mhm.
ability. And like
Mhm.
everyone who like is going to art school or going to school, like use the resources because once you graduate, you're not
Mhm.
gonna it's not gonna be promised to you. And or COVID happens and I have no way of doing these things that I want to do. So
Yeah.
I turned to my iPad Pro, and I became like my savior, and I just turned to digital art and Procreate, and I'm sure you follow me on
Mm.
Instagram, like it's all
Mhm.
digital
Yeah.
now, and I love it, and it opened up a part of me that I was like, I kind of love illustration, and I've had people be like,
Right.
"Hey, you should do illustration," and I was never on social media, like I was, but I was like, I deleted the apps off my phone, I wasn't into it, and I
Mhm.
started an art Instagram during COVID, and with the help of my manager.
Yeah.
Ashlyn Moss, her name there. She helped me start it. She's a friend from high school. So, and she wants to be a manager of like artists. So like it was cool.
Mhm.
Anyway, so made the Instagram and it just, I want to say like it was exponential, but like, I have like
Mhm.
100 followers. I'm not like famous, but it
Mhm.
makes me so
Right, it
happy to,
brings joy. Mhm.
yeah, and it made me like produce so much art. Like I did in
Right.
Inktober, and so I made art
Oh,
every
yes.
day of October, and I was like,
Mhm.
this is cool. Like I made connections. Like I reached out
Mhm.
to this wonderful knitter on Instagram, and I
Ooh.
created stuff for her stickers. Now she sells stickers and like
Ooh.
and it's like
Mhm.
that's the biggest advice I could give anyone. It's just embarrass yourself to the point where you're reaching out to everybody and being like, hey, I don't know if you want me, but I'll help. And it's
Yeah.
like, it sounds stupid, but that's how artists make their way anyway.
Mhm.
So digital art has become everything to me, but it's
Mhm.
been hard. It's been rough.
Yeah.
I miss having a studio, and I think only
Mhm.
recently that I really kind of mourn what happened. Like I think
Mm.
when we all got sent home, I was kind of just like, I think we were all in survival mode. We were like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, what am I gonna do? And then I decided to
Mhm.
take a gap year, and then and then it hit me like mid after Christmas. I was like, oh my God. Like
Yeah.
it's been almost a year since I've seen my friends, since I've
Mhm.
and like it was rough for a while there. I was like, I don't I mean, I'm sure everyone you've experienced like the moment where it kind of hits and you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
that
It's
happened
like
to me. And
it's been hitting me like this past month where I'm
yeah,
like, because it's like I'm trying to get an apartment in June, but like in the back of my mind, I'm like, but what if like that doesn't happen? Like, what if like something,
yeah,
terrible like
what if
happens?
you have to
Yeah.
continue living the way you live right now for
Right.
another year?
Hmm. Which is so scary to think about.
And I mean, I love my family, but
Hmm.
we lost
Yeah.
independence. We
Yeah.
lost
We're like 20, 21 years old. Like,
lost a big part of ourselves, and it's not just
mm-hmm.
like I can go anywhere I want and party. Like it's like no, just like the aspect of
Yeah.
just
Like
being,
having space. Yeah.
yeah,
Being.
just being. And
Mhm.
you and I were talking about this. We both were trying to make our room, like claiming
Yeah.
it. Not what it looked like
Mhm.
when I moved into it. I took the year to be like, you know what, I'm gonna be here for a year.
Yeah. Like,
I'm gonna hang up art. I'm gonna actually make my room look the way I want it to look because I'm
mhm.
actually gonna have to. And then we're here for like a year and a half. I'm like, oh my god.
What are you looking forward to like this year or just post pandemic?
Um, that's a very good question. I don't know. I I don't know. I think I want to see my friends. That's the thing I want to
Mm-hmm.
do. That's
Yeah.
all. I want to see them, and especially Mavi because she's literally in a different
She's from
continent.
Turkey?
Yeah,
Mm.
and she's in between Europe and Asia right now. And so I'm like I could go up north and see my other friends, but like she's in a different continent. So I
Right.
right now all I'm thinking about is when will Turkey let me go? So I'm just looking forward to living life again,
Mhm.
to being able to not wear a mask, not have to wear a mask,
Yeah.
and I wish I had more like aspirational desires, but
It's
it's really
okay.
just
Yeah.
like I
Hmm.
just I we had so much freedom in so many ways.
Hmm.
And I was so lucky in so many ways where if I was like, let's go to New York or
Yeah.
we should plan a trip to Florida
Hmm.
sometime. And it's like,
Hmm.
no.
Yeah, because you
So,
guys would go on trips all the time.
oh my God, yes,
Hmm.
all the
I
time.
love that.
So, but currently, my job is very intense. And so I'm looking forward to when it gets kind of even more intense
Hmm.
and I get to meet all these different types of people so I'm just
Hmm.
trying, yeah, I'm just looking forward.
Keep going. Hmm.
Just looking forward, man. Try not to look back
Hmm.
because it sucks.
Yeah. Like, yeah, we're not dealing with that right now.
No, I'll wait
Yeah.
a few years. Wait till I'm like
Yeah.
in my midlife crisis and be like,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Remember 2020?